My parents told me to end my pregnancy so I could keep paying their bills. So I terminated them from my life. I started helping my parents with money when I was 22. I had just gotten my first real job working as a project coordinator at a construction firm, and I was making decent money for someone my age. My mom, Nadine, called me the first month and said the electricity was about to get shut off. I paid it. My dad, Court, called the next month and said the car needed new brakes. I paid it. By the end of that first year, I was covering their electricity, their water, their car payment, and sending them extra cash every month for whatever else came up. Nobody asked me if I could afford it. They just expected it. By the time I was 26, I was making more money because I had worked hard and moved up. I was a senior coordinator running my own jobs, and my paycheck reflected that. But every time I got a raise, my parents' needs grew to match it. Nadine needed a new fridge. Court needed tires. The roof leaked. Every month there was something, and every month I paid for it. I was spending close to $2,000 a month on their house on top of my own rent and my own bills. My boyfriend Ames told me it was too much. I told him they needed me. He said they needed to get jobs. They were both in their early 50s and healthy. Nadine hadn't worked in 4 years. Court did odd handyman jobs here and there, but nothing consistent. They could have worked. They chose not to because I was easier. When I was 27, I found out I was pregnant. Ames and I had been together for 3 years, and we were happy about it. We weren't rich, but we had enough between us to make it work. We sat down and went through our budget and figured out what to adjust. One of those adjustments was cutting back on how much I sent my parents. I called Nadine and told her I was pregnant. She didn't say congratulations. She said, oh. Then she asked how that was going to work with everything I had going on. I said we were figuring it out. She said okay, and hung up. 2 days later, both my parents showed up at my apartment. They didn't call first. Court sat on my couch, and Nadine stood in my kitchen, and they told me I needed to think carefully about this pregnancy. I said I had thought about it and I was keeping it. Nadine said I wasn't being realistic. She said a baby was expensive and that I was already stretched thin helping them. She said if I had a baby, I wouldn't be able to keep up with their bills and their house and that everything would fall apart. I told her we would figure it out. That's when Court said it. He said maybe you should wait. He said you're still young and there's plenty of time to have kids later when you're more established. He said right now the timing isn't good for anyone. I looked at him and asked him what he meant by anyone. He said the family. I said what family? He said all of us. You, me, your mother. We all depend on you, and bringing a baby into this right now isn't fair to anybody. Nadine jumped in and said they weren't telling me what to do, but that I needed to be smart. She said having a baby right now would be selfish because it would put everyone at risk. She called me selfish for wanting to have my own child because it would affect the money I was giving them. I sat there and let them finish. Nadine went on about how she and Court had already made sacrifices for me when I was growing up, and now it was my turn to think about them. She said that's how it works. She said you take care of the people who took care of you first, and everything else comes after. Court nodded along the whole time like they had rehearsed it in the car on the way over. When they were done, I stood up and told them to leave. Nadine said we're not done talking. I said I am. They left. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Ames and went through every payment I had made to my parents in the last 5 years. Every electricity bill, every car payment, every emergency that wasn't really an emergency, every extra 500, every time Nadine called crying about something that needed fixing, and every time Court said they just needed a little help this month. I had records for most of it because I had paid through my bank app or Venmo or direct transfer. Ames helped me pull every transaction. We put it all in a spreadsheet. It took us almost 3 hours. The total came out to just over $96,000. I stared at that number for a long time.